Mark McCloskey joins me now via Skype from St. Louis. And Mark, it's good to see you. Thanks for your time today. And man, oh man, I bet you never thought just a year ago that you would find yourself in this situation.
It's a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah. And you were having dinner, and I know you've told this story. You were having dinner, and then you see this happening. I Are you able to actually even leave your house anymore? I would be a little nervous about that.
It depends on where we go. Our office, if you're familiar with the neighborhood, the St. Louis Cathedral's on Lindell, about 3 blocks from here.
Yep.
My office building is a 1887 Victorian across the street. Going that direction makes us a little nervous, and we have been getting death threats. We go west, though, to go to dinner in Clayton. We got a standing ovation at dinner the other night. People come up, hugs and kisses, and want to get selfies taken. So it just depends on what part of town you're in.
Yeah, what part of town you're in, and it's a beautiful area that I know it seems this. I get the feeling that the media makes it seem more divided than it is, at least in support for you and your wife. I know that we shared the story earlier when it happened of the raid that was done on your home, the firearms that were confiscated. What are you able, because I know that this is still kind of a legal back and forth, what are you able to share in far of developments on that?
Well, as you know, last Friday they did execute a search warrant at the house. They did not raid the house. The cops that came out were perfect gentlemen. They were very polite. They my wife answered the door and they said, well, take as much time as you need. If you need to talk to your lawyer, that's fine. And then we just handed over the AR, which I had here. The pistol had already been given to my attorney's office, and the police, didn't want to have to do it, but they were doing their job. And Patty asked them if it'd be okay if she took a picture to document it, and asked them if they wouldn't mind turning their faces away so that their friends and relatives wouldn't get mad at them for participating in it. They all did it. They're perfect gentlemen, and the local police have been doing their job, but they have been unsupported by the local government.
Yeah, very much so, and I can imagine too. When you see this happening at your home, knowing just a couple of weeks earlier, there was a retired police captain who, if you go down Kings Highway one way, you're going to come around at the part where David Dorn had been murdered by violent rioters. So it's not beyond, you were well within your reasoned suspicion to think that, okay, this could get really violent really quickly.
Well, on June 2nd, the downtown St. Louis was burned. I watched the 7-Eleven. I was upstairs in my house watching live feed on television, watched the first window get broken, the building get looted, then the fire started, then the 7-Eleven fully engulfed in flame. 40 minutes I'm watching this on television. No police come, no fire department comes. That night, Captain Dorn gets murdered. This is a dangerous, life-threatening situation. And they can call it a peaceful mob. But there were lots of people in that mob that were armed. There was a guy that took out 2 loaded magazines, showed them to me, clicked them together and said, "You are next." And these were not nonviolent, peaceful protesters. The way the media talks about it, other than Fox and certain other media, the traditional media reports it as this being a group of peaceful protesters walking past my home on the way to the mayor's house. Well, as you know, the mayor does not live on my street.
Doesn't live on that street.
The mayor lives on Lake and Westminster, which is almost a half a mile west of me and 3 blocks north. And you cannot get there through my neighborhood without breaking down the gate they broke down, going through private property for a half a mile, and breaking down another gate to get out. It is ludicrous. It is only people that are intentionally distorting the facts that would call this a peaceful protest of people walking by my property on the way to the mayor's house.
Right, absolutely. And I want to reestablish this for everyone who isn't familiar with St. Louis, because there are private streets in the city of St. Louis, and yours is considered a private street. And I've gone before on this program into the history of that just to give people a perspective, but just your thought really quickly on that aspect of it.
Yeah, it's just private, it's gated, and there are big signs on every entrance. Well, there's a drive entrance, and all the pedestrian entrances that say private street. We own the streets, we own the sidewalks, we pay for all the maintenance. It is strictly private. It is not a public thoroughfare. It's not public sidewalks. I put the sidewalk in front of my house in myself a few years ago, and this is all private property. As soon as they breached that gate, the pretense of peacefulness ended, because they were intending to trespass at that point. And the advertisement, I learned this in retrospect, but I went back and I looked at the Expect Us flyer that was advertising this protest. They said that something to the effect, now get the words not precisely right, we're going to go to the mayor's house and a special surprise or something extra. And I can't help but think that that something extra was breaching Portland Place and coming through to threaten us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Not me specifically, just the people on
right.
Portland Place.
Exactly, exactly. And for everyone who happens to be along the path who would just happen to be out of doors as you and your wife were, that's that's what ends up happening. I'm curious because we've heard a lot from the circuit attorney about you and your wife, but I haven't really heard anything from her about the mob that she's only referred to as peaceful protesters. Has anyone there been charged at all with trespassing or property damage?
Not to my knowledge. And by the way, the press, the traditional media is still taking the position, well, we can't tell whether the gate was broken or not. Well, heck, I took pictures on my cell phone. The metadata on my cell phone says I took those pictures at 7:42 p.m. that night. I was being interviewed on Breakfast Britain, and the commentator was saying, well, we don't know exactly when those pictures were taken, do we? And I said, well, heck yes, I do. I took them myself. But I've seen as recently as a Post-Dispatch, I think this last weekend, still referring to the gate being broken as allegedly broken.
Allegedly broken. Well, yeah, it's not so allegedly for you or the alleged bill for repairs that everyone on that street's going to have to assume in order to fix it. So are you expecting to be charged by and if you are, for what you can tell me, because I understand there's certain legalities that you must observe, but what even would you be charged for?
Well, I'm not a criminal lawyer. I'm a personal injury lawyer. I mostly do brain injury and neurological injury cases. My lawyer advises me not to comment on the air, and he advised me not to be on this program, but he advised me to be not on any program, but somebody's got to speak up. So I'm here. What charges? I don't know. I've been assured by every legal authority, from the Attorney General of the state of Missouri to my attorneys, to the governor for that matter, and all the way from the White House, that we've done absolutely nothing wrong. We were on our own property, defending our property against a mob. I'm sorry, we can't use that word anymore. That's a word we're not allowed to use in the media these days. A angry large group of people broke through the gate, looked like I was going to be killed instantly, and the house ransacked and burned. I mean, there were hundreds of people, literally hundreds of people coming at us, scared us to death. I pick up a weapon to defend myself. My wife picks up a weapon to defend herself. We're on our own property facing hundreds. If that's against the law, then we're in a world of hurt as a country.
Yeah, we spoke with Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt on the show just a couple of days ago, and he, of course, brought up Missouri's castle doctrine, which is obviously there's a little bit of difference with Missouri's castle doctrine as compared to some other states, because it's not just at your property; it's also if you're at your home, it's your vehicle, etc. And you all remained on your property the entire time. Obviously you've seen a lot of the headlines and the pictures and the memes and everything else that has come up, and they say that, oh, well, the McCloskeys were brandishing, they had their fingers on the trigger, they were going to shoot the angry mob. There were no shots fired, but obviously you were scared. Any normal person in their right mind would be terrified, particularly knowing what has been happening in that city with violent crime, murder, rioting, arson, and the circuit attorney lets everyone out. No charges against any of these individuals for doing this. I wouldn't be surprised, Mark, if some of the very individuals that we've seen in footage burning down buildings and assaulting people, etc., were in that group as well. Your thoughts?
Yeah, 35 people I think she let out of jail who were directly involved in the riots on June 2nd and afterwards. And yet they want to prosecute me for protecting my property. I'm not going to say too much. There's an election on August the 4th, and in the city of St. Louis, whoever wins the Democratic primary is the elected official, and so part of this may get determined 2 weeks from Tuesday.
Yeah, well, and that's part of the big reason why Kim Gardner, I think, is using you all and going after you in the manner in which she is, because she needs to be reelected, and we know how St. Louis City votes. I know that you've been pictured having private security at your home. Are you and your wife getting training? And because I always tell people, make sure you're your own first responders, because sometimes that private security, maybe they're on a break, or maybe the police can't get there because rioters are attacking the car. I mean, that's actually a feasible idea now to have that to put that out there. But are you and your wife getting training in the horrible event that you ever have to deal with anything like this again?
We've gotten a lot of offers. We've gotten a lot of offers from people that want to give us free weapons and training. Right now, though, because of the legal situation, It may be the case that I'm not allowed to possess a weapon if, for example, if I get indicted and I'm on bond and those kinds of things, is my understanding. We don't know what's going to happen. And so I don't want to speculate right now, and I don't want to give anybody ideas or piss anybody off more than I already have. But yeah, I think my wife put it best earlier that somebody asked her, well, what do you think about what women ought to do now? And she said, well, I think it's time that women have to not just count on their men for protection, but protect themselves and take up arms and learn how to use them.
Right.
When you incite violence and you support the mob, sorry, I use that word again, at the same time that you handcuff the police, what are the citizens supposed to do?
Right.
And then when you do something like I did, like my wife did, what happens? You get the whole force of the media and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch trying to shame us and malign us and sling mud at us. And it's the same routine all the time. They try to intimidate you and pressure you into apologizing when you've done nothing wrong. If I wasn't my own boss, if I was employed by somebody else, I would have been fired. This happened on June 28th on a Sunday. I wouldn't have had a job to go to Monday morning. And so, that's the social pressure that they bring to bear upon anybody that dares resist. And we just have to stand up and put an end to that.
There's one thing that you said that really stayed with me, and I think this was one of the first interviews that you had given on this, and you were talking about how you were on your way to work and you happened to see some kind of sign that was vandalized, and you said, this isn't a protest, it's a revolution. Tell me about that.
Well, a friend of mine was having breakfast last Sunday morning at a coffee shop around the corner, 2 blocks from my house. And there's a group of young Caucasian girls who are in their 20s, so young ladies, and an older kind of organizer who is also a female and white, and they were having a planning session. And the words went like this: democracy doesn't work. You can't do anything by voting. You have to do it through action and violence. These are Marxist revolutionaries. There's no question about it. A local school administrator I saw on the news this morning is being asked to resign because she had the audacity on her Facebook page to say that Black Lives Matter is a fraud. But they are avowed Marxists. They've been out in public saying they're trained Marxists. And yet the traditional media refuses to report that. It's as if it's a benevolent society when they are publicly advocating overthrow of everything that makes the United States special and has made us the greatest nation on earth for the last 244 years.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what this is. And you and your wife have been caught up in it inadvertently through, you didn't seek it out, but it found you. And I tell people, look, at some point, everyone's going to have to deal with this in some manner or another. Oh goodness, we all watched that video. I was watching it happen live online, and our prayers are with you and your wife for sure. And we'll continue following this story. But we appreciate your time today, and we hope that you'll stay in touch, and we'll revisit when we get some more developments. Mark McCloskey, thank you so much.